Hey guys, how's it going? Jasensational here, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little bit of a while since I did a video on just the decks to play. The last one was when the patch hit, and it's been roughly 3 weeks, I believe, and I just wanted to make a quick sort of update video on how the meta has sort of shifted, and you can good compare and contrast between what decks I sort of recommend at the beginning of the patch and what decks are kind of shining right now. So this is going to be 8 decks that you guys can sort of play out on ladder, and mix between very good climb decks, very situational decks, as well as some of the cooler highlights that I want to showcase for you guys that I have found doing quite well within some of the meta stats. So without further ado, let's kick it off and jump right into it. So the first deck we have here is Mono Shurima. Mono Shurima has a really funny story. At the beginning, when it got buffed, everyone thought it was tier 1, the best deck, and then suddenly the win rate plummeted because a lot of the Riven Viktor came in. But as the meta progressed, Azir Xerath, the Mono Shurima deck, I think remains to be one of the top or close to the best ladder deck at the moment. It's really insane. It feels like it doesn't really have too many soft spots. I think early on within the patch, when a lot of people were playing a lot of the predict things, they were suffering a little bit more. And now we have finally come to a refined spot for Mono Shurima, and this is something very similar to that. It plays very heavily for the Buried Sun Disc. You have Soothsayers, you have the Ride Negations. You don't have any card that costs more than 3 except for Xerath and Rite of Negation. Very low to the ground, very fast at leveling your Sun Disc. You want to be hitting that on turn 6, 7, and then you just win the game from there. 3 Quicksand, non-negotiable. You play 3, you don't lose to Riven Viktor. It just doesn't feel like there's too many bad matchups for Azir Xerath outside of a lot of these other sort of burn-oriented decks. Riven Viktor, while it does have burn, it is still very reliant on units to connect to face in order to push damage, and Quicksand shuts that right away. Otherwise, Mono Shurima very powerful into all the late game control decks. Any deck like Darkness, Feel the Rush, like Aphelios, Sentinels, whatever it may be, absolutely dumpstered on by Sundisk. No deck that aims to destroy Sundisk can even hold a candle to it outside of exactly Scorched Earth on turn 2, because this version of the deck is a lot less mid-range. But outside of that, nothing else comes even close to being able to race with Sundisk. Even some of the more mid-range decks, Scouts, Sivir Auction, Pantheon, can still struggle greatly into Mono Shurima because of Quicksand and because of how fast it gets off. If they have a level Ascended Xerath on turn 6, 7, the game's over. So Mono Shurima, quite the highlight, quite powerful, and probably up there for one of the best decks to climb with on ladder. And now, here we have stuff to beat the hell out of Mono Shurima, because Mono Shurima is the most played deck on ladder, as well as boasting some of the highest win rate decks on ladder relative to how much it's played. And this is bringing back a lot of burn and aggro decks into the meta. Pirates being one of them, one of the decks that has probably come the most resurgence out of all of them. Just coming back to kind of beat up on the Mono Shurima. 6 1-drops, bam. Mono Shurima just really can't do anything about. Having Fearsome's Mono Shurima really struggles into as well. Just being able to go wide, push damage early on, having Decimate and Fervor close out the game. Just a strategy that Mono Shurima just has no way of interacting with. If they have the Rite of Negation on like a turn 5, that's slowing down their game plan that they can't develop, and then you just steamroll them with your next attack. Burn is just so strong into Mono Shurima right now that you really need to be having strategies that don't lose to Quicksand. If your strategy of Burn loses to Quicksand, you are not beating Mono Shurima. And that's why Pirates does that job very well, because their damage comes through how wide they can go on board. Being able to get 6 1-drops down is able to push so much more damage than having to try to go in with an elusive Viktor, elusive Riven, or an overall ballistic bot. And so that's why you see a big resurgence of Pirates, which is one of the decks out there that really does counter Mono Shurima very, very well. The next deck is also another burn deck. It's something that has seen a surprising resurgence of. This is traditional Draven Jinx discard aggro. Very similar back in the day, but the game plan is still the same. You want to be going wide, pushing damage early on with units, and then having burn to finish out your opponent. Whether that be just Decimate or just Jinx Rockets with Get Excited, strategy is still the same. And this deck has actually seen a little bit of a resurgence and has been coming back onto ladder. Now, I haven't seen it personally much, but the meta stats show that it's doing quite well, and I would assume why these same burn strategies do well, being able to pick up on Mono Shurima, as well as just being able to pick up on some of the other smaller aggro decks as well. Draven or discard aggro has generally been known to be able to do that. So if you want a little bit of nostalgia, discard aggro is coming back, and it's a cool deck to try out. I still do want to give props to Riven Viktor being one of the highest played as well as one of the higher win rate decks on ladder. Still just a very, very solid deck, even without Quicksand, without Vengeance. This deck still does the work. Beats up, goes wide, has a lot of different game plans. Decimate Burn is still very powerful. If they don't draw the Quicksands, you still kill. You still dish out the damage onto their Nexus. I think this deck is just super consistent in its game plan. You execute it every single game, no problem, and it's still very powerful at what it does. Being able to go wide with 3 different threats can often not just put your game in a very strong spot. Having the Decimates and Burn to get excited to close out the game is just very, very powerful overall. You might have to play a little bit differently into Quicksand, maybe go wider, put less buffs into each unit, and just play a little bit differently. But Riven Viktor remains one of the highest played decks and just has a very consistent game plan that makes it still so powerful. The next one is a little bit of a surprise to even me. This is Plunder, the classic Freljord or Bilgewater Allegiance deck that just aims to level up the champions and bum rush your opponent down afterwards. The reason why this deck has been showing a little bit of resurgence in meta stats is again because of Mono Shurima. Leveled Gangplank can just destroy a Mono Shurima and push so much damage. The same game plan you have a tempo-based wide board strat early on, you have the Make Your Rains and the Parleys to get rid of annoying blockers like Treasure Seeker as well as Rock Hopper, which can really slow down your opponent because they're investing 2 mana into a 1 health unit. Suddenly you Make It Rain for a big bunch of tempo, and you can start pushing a lot of damage with a wide board. They also have a really difficult time of interacting with your board, so if you drop a Crackshot Corsair on turn 1, that's giving you value every single attack turn, and also guaranteeing that you level up your champions as fast as possible. Leveled Gangplank destroys. Sort of the deck. Even into other things like the heavy Demacy stuff, leveled Sejuani is still an absolute house into those strategies. Being able to board freeze your opponent is still good into a lot of these ambush decks as well. So the augment stuff, pushing in with a lot of damage, things like that. You have the ability to go wide, you have the Sejuani lock, or you have the Gangplank to bust down your opponent's door, push a lot of damage. Under, looking still pretty strong, is still nerfed. You're going to struggle a lot more into other things, but most importantly, cutting out the Harpoon card, which is no longer seeing play after its nerf. Next up, we have something a little bit spicier. This is Viktor with Udyr, the Freljord version instead of the sort of Riven Viktor Noxus variant itself. So instead of playing Burn, you have a little bit more of a slower mid-rangey strategy, but is a little bit more explosive near the end. We do have Shaman's Call, which is an easy way of granting 2 of our units Overwhelm, such as Vi or Viktor, or even Udyr, Ballistic Bot, anything that just gets really big. But the advantage to being in Freljord is we get access to freezes, such as Three Sisters, which really shuts down the Riven Viktor decks, as well as Troll Chant and Elixir of Iron, 2 extremely strong protection spells that will help you in any sort of aggro plus mid-range matchup. This deck is sort of like a mirror counter into the Riven Viktor deck. As far as I heard, this deck is also supposed to be good into Mono Shurima, which I suppose the Riven Viktor deck is supposedly good for the same reasons. But this just serves as a different flavor to the Viktor Vi ambush sort of strategies or the overwhelm strategies. You have the protection tools, you have the protection spells in order to protect your key units a little bit better. Still folds to the same sort of vengeance strategies, but outside of that, when it's all board-based in the mirror, this will really help you out with freezes as well as Troll Chant. Now, for the last 2 decks, these are a little bit more interesting just because they come up on the radar. Zilean Ekko, or Ekko Zilean, whatever you want to say, has been dishing out a lot of games on ladder. The win rate is pretty abysmal, unfortunately, but I think that's maybe not as reflective of what I think the power level of the deck is. Not sure if people are playing it wrong or if it's really just a bad deck. But this deck continues to surprise me by how potentially powerful and swingy it can be. Being able to level up Ekko and get the time tricks into the chrono breaks becomes a very, very powerful strategy into even some of the strongest mid-range decks out there. The reason why I do want to recommend it at the very least is because I believe that this deck is very, very good into aggressive strategies. Being able to go wide with drop borders, as well as felines, chronomancers, things like that, and having scrying sands to make good value trades, have mystic shot for a little bit of removal, and being able to close games out super fast with Ekko makes this a very good counter into a lot of other sort of aggressive strategies as well. As you see more Plunder deck, or as you see more Pirates matchups, I would see Zilean Ekko doing quite well into the mix, as well as having good matchups into some more mid-range strategies. And then finally, this is a deck that I think has been popping up in the APAC regions and has been boasting a pretty good win rate. This is Mono Viego in a classic SI Shurima package. So quite reminiscent of the Thresh Nasus days, but this is a lot slower, a lot more mid-rangey. Featuring all 6 copies of the Grant vulnerable to a unit cards, we have 3 Merciless as well as 3 Sand Spinners to take advantage of our mists with Viego as well as Camavoran Soldier. Now that we are in Shurima, we have access to probably what is one of the best protection spells in the game, Ancient Hourglass, being able to save Viego or Hydrovine, or even on a Camo Soldier in order to duplicate the mist for a following turn. And we also have the ability to run 2 of the most strongest cards in the game, Quicksand as well as Deny. It's like, it's just a really solid pile. It's very in on this Viego strategy, but because we have Deny as well as Ancient Hourglass, we're able to execute it off very, very well. The only issue is Viego suffers into Mono Shurima, because once you have the Ascended Xerath, you can no longer progress your Viego because nothing is dying, they're only getting obliterated. But the slower sort of mid-range strategy, you can definitely get to outscale a lot of other things out there, as long as you hold up a little bit of the aggressive beginnings, because I feel like this deck would be a little bit weaker into more aggressive decks. 3 1-drops, 3 2-drops. If you miss them, you're kind of out of luck. So definitely looks like a mid-range killer. Could even potentially do well into a lot of other control strategies because of 3 denies and 3 hourglasses. If they can't remove Viego, you're going to win the game slowly but surely. So this deck has been popping up and looks very interesting and is maybe a shot to try out depending on where the meta shifts. So that's sort of how it's going. We have Mono Shurima, the decks that beat Mono Shurima, and the decks that beat up the decks that beat up Mono Shurima. And that's sort of where the meta is right now. Hopefully with the upcoming champion rework, we'll see a little bit of a break in the cycle. But unless they really change something about Mono Shurima, I see the meta being maybe not changing so much because of how not only polarizing how the deck is, but actually how powerful it is regardless of its polarization. Like, it's polarizing and it's super powerful. So unless Mono Shurima gets changed, I feel like the meta is either going to shift towards a very, very burn heavy strategy, or I don't know. We'll see. But that's just general thoughts. 8 decks that you could try out on ladder today. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please do try out the decks. All of them are within the deck or description. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know which decks you guys are having success with. And please do leave a like, subscribe to the video. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great day. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow with another video. So peace out, guys, and take care.